when I get back to the conference, it's easy to move to the future when you have a crisis. So when IBM was in trouble, and we started our trouble with 412,000 people, and we ended our trouble with 217,000 people. You didn't have to convince the remaining 217,000 people there was a problem. I mean, I think they understood when they came to work, since half their colleagues were gone, there was a problem, right? You know, so now we're back to 405,000 people, roughly, you know. About 1 million people if I add in contractors and support business partners and those types of folks. So, you know, we have now completely returned. So it's actually harder in today's environment, or in a very successful state or city or economic environment, if you're a society or a country, to move to the future. It's harder. And so I think, and we just heard from Claudio, I think the important thing is this: you have to build constituency of support, citizens, universities, etc. In my world, employees, customers, or clients, and shareholders. They have to give me the money. You have to get the money someplace. I have to go get the money someplace. Shareholder or a bank, I have to go get the money, right? So you have to convince them that it's clearly the right way to the future, ahead of when it is. Ahead, not behind. And I'll give you one example. We missed the trend called PCs. We were in large computing. That's what led to a lot of the IBM problems. Oh, by the way, we invented the PC with Microsoft and Intel. So, by the way, so it isn't like we weren't there. We just didn't do it very well after we created it. So then you sit there and say, you know, in 2003, 2004, we decided to get out of everything that was PC related. That was probably 4 or 5 years before somebody woke up and said PCs are over. But you have to be ahead. You can't be behind and decide something is a problem, because the cost associated with making that transition is extreme, and it's very difficult to build support. And I'll draw the analogy to you guys. You cannot get behind, because if all of a sudden there is an economic crisis, i.e., something happens, whatever it happens to be. I'll use oil as my analogy, although you're not an oil-driven economy. You can pick your own copper. I won't say copper. All of a sudden, China stops. Copper collapses. Your expenses are here, but your tax revenues are falling. Okay, right? You have no financial flexibility. Crime's going to go up. You think you get reelected? What do you think, Claudio, my friend? I don't know.
How about the local level? I'm not a national one.
No. I don't know.
If I were president, I wouldn't.
I'm a CEO. I don't know. Well, you know, if I bet on $150 oil, it goes to 50. My costs are at 80. You think I'd be in my job in 2 years? I don't think so. You know, I don't think so, unless I can give really good speeches. And I demonstrated I can't do that. So, so that's my point is that seriously, in a humorous way, using humor, you know, you always, I believe, have to be ahead. In Claudio, you have to prepare your citizens and your society. And you have to do it in a way that they can relate to. No different than I have to prepare our investors and our employees. I had to say to employees and investors, the strategy will start today, but you should measure it between now and 2010. And now we say you should look at it today between now and 2015. But they understand what that means. So if you're the employee, you understand what it means from the systems and technology and invention. And if you're an investor, you understand what it means on earnings per share, cash flow, et cetera, on their metrics. So that's my only point. I'm going to try to influence everybody to say that you can never get behind a big problem. Because if you're behind a big problem, you can't solve a big problem without a crisis. So you have to stay ahead of the big problems.
One characteristic of trying to get a city to work and work smarter is that you have to overcome some of the images that you build, you're living with. State is too big. Politicians are all crooked. I'm pro-choice. I'm pro-life. This mayor is somewhere in one of those positions. How do I believe? How do I trust a person that is a politician?
Features. And I demonstrated I can't do that. So, so that's my point is that seriously, in a humorous way, using humor, you know, you always, I believe, have to be ahead. in Claudio, is you have to prepare your citizens and your society. And you have to do it in a way that they can relate to. No different than I have to prepare our investors and our employees. I had to say to employees and investors, the strategy will start today, but you should measure it between now and 2010. And now we say you should look at it today between now and 2015. But they understand what that means. So if you're the employee, you understand what it means from the systems and technology and invention. And if you're an investor, you understand what it means on earnings per share, cash flow, et cetera, on their metrics. So that's my only point. I'm going to try to influence everybody to say that you can never get behind a big problem. Because if you're behind a big problem, you can't solve a big problem without a crisis. So you have to stay ahead of the big problems.
One characteristic of trying to get a city to work and work smarter is that you have to overcome some of the images that you build, you're living with. State is too big. Politicians are all crooked. I'm pro-choice. I'm pro-life. This mayor is somewhere in one of those positions. How do I believe? How do I trust a person that is a politician? Like yourself, Claudio, when politics is really, little tarnished nowadays, and not only because of journalists,
Well, one of the things that I try to do when I speak, not only to an audience like this one, of business people or people from university, but also, especially to young people who are the more skeptical with politicians, is that I define myself as a politician. Not only as a public servant, not only as a public manager, because I think any country that wants to have a strong development strategy over time needs to have strong political institutions, clean, and of course efficient. And unless we're able to attract, young, talented people, and to believe that politics can be one of the most interesting, amazing, exciting, and in a way like honored professions or vocations in the world, we're going to be left with those who weren't able to succeed in the private sector, in the public sector. And I don't believe in that. And I've worked in the public sector and the private sector. And some of the things we have talked about today, about resistance to change, for example, I've seen it in banks, in retail companies, and municipalities. It's not only a matter of the nature of the institution, it's a matter of nature of human beings, the fear of change. And we need people in the public sector that not only because they speak well or they have nice speeches, because they are able to deliver results and they're able to aggregate the willingness of different people to overcome problems. I was thinking that there's someone here that's going to speak in the next panel, but there's one problem we have today, not only in Chile, in our municipalities, but anywhere in the world, which is the contamination and the amount of money that we spend on garbage collection and disposition and transport. I was telling someone from an international magazine yesterday, we spend in Peñalolén 10% of our budget, we throw it to the garbage, really. It's to pick garbage and to throw it elsewhere in Santiago. If we were only able to recycle 10%, only able to recycle 10% of our garbage, not only we will, support a clean environment, we will be, world conscious citizens, but we will save the local government a lot of money that we will spend on education, social services. And so we partnered with a company, which is Chilectra, and we did Eco Chilectra, which is a program where we incentive people to recycle in their homes, and all the things are recycled, we sell them, and they will discount in their light bill an amount of things they recycle. So we have economic incentives to do something that is good for the environment, for the city, and for us. And we included, the poor people that go through the streets with picking up the garbage as part of the cycle, and we have an inclusive business cycle here. Why I mention this? Because Once you're able to do this, as a mayor, as a politician, bring the private sector, bring the least favored people in society and common citizens to one concrete program that has results, people start trusting again in politicians and political leaders. If you're not able to deliver those results, politics will continue to be considered as I wouldn't say the most honorable profession in society, but quite the opposite. And we need to change that image. And that's what many mayors in Chile and everywhere are trying to do. And we hope that, with the support of other people, we're able to push forward the frontier of things that are that seem impossible right now, but with a lot of help could be possible.
Fernando, I want to ask a question to you also based upon your experience. You've worked mostly in the private sector, and all of a sudden you are made into a governor of a huge city like the metropolitan region. When you are in the private sector, probably you can control things much better when you build the house. You know who your client is, you know what the demands are of those people, and all of a sudden you have to create public value, which is something that not necessarily is present in every single negotiation in private business. And you have to create public value, coordination, making a city smarter, good transportation, all the things that you presented in your PowerPoint. So how do you make the switch? What do you bring from the private sector that you think is very valuable to work in government, and what is there that you have to acquire from the public sector to make your position more efficient?
Well, the change is a very radical change to pass from the private sector to the public sector. But I think that when you take decisions and you take an action, it has much more influence in the quality of life. I have seen, by my experience in these few months, I have been going to every boroughs of the city, and immediately I see when we have a good mayor. I have here in front the mayor of Puente Alto, one of the biggest part of the city, and immediately when you cross the line from Puente Alto, you see the difference of the mayor, where the quality of life of these people are improving through good politics. So I have a great respect with politicians, and I have always have. I think many times we have talked bad about them, but we need a lot of people to dedicate to politics and to do things good and to do things well. I have a more optimistic view of our city. Santiago, I think it has become a safe city. If you see the rates of crime of Santiago is compared only to the best cities in Europe, it has been now is a connected city also with very good transportation system, very expensive, that's our problem. But it has become an environmental medium city, not the worst city in the world, but not the best city in the world. And that Santiago, all these conditions, and as was told before, is permitting now people to develop themselves. And I see that the role that has the politicians in this is very important, because good politics makes these things work.
Claudio,
I want to add something. I think one of the problems we have is the tyranny of averages. Because I think on average, what the Intendente is saying is right. We have a very livable city compared to any other standard. The problem is the distribution of that average. And I think we have a very unjust city.